Everything's fine. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us at Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. As you know, every month we try to bring topics that we think are worthy of discussion and that people need to know about. I think that for those of us that travel in the circles of dealing with victims and some of the things that are going on, I think that we think that other people know more about what's going on just because it's the world that we live in on a regular basis. And so when I started at Maryland Crime Victims, I know that I was really confused all the time. And I really had to slow people down because, I was the newbie. And so I wanted to bring that same type of experience to our people at home. You might be looking for information. You might find something that that you're doing research on, or something that's happened to you or someone that you care about, and you're looking for resources. So our intention for these videos for the Lunch and Learn is for people to be able to watch live, ask questions live, like real life questions, and also to maybe refer to them later once they're in our archive. So this month we are talking about teen dating violence, similar, not the same as domestic violence, and we're going to talk about some of those things. Joining us today is Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center's Director of Victim Services, Gloria Luckett, CEO of, I know you from Unstoppable You Ministries, Jennifer Foxworthy, and then Candace Parrot. Is it Parrot?
Yes, Parrot.
Parrot,
Mm-hmm.
okay. From Araminta, and we'll have them do some brief introductions to them, and then we'll hop right into the conversations. For those of you at home, if you have questions, go ahead and drop them in the Dropbox, and we will get those to you we'll try to respond as soon as we can. Okay, let's just start with our round robin with Gloria Luckett.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gloria Luckett, and I'm the Director of Victim Services here at Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. And I'm really, really excited to be a part of the Lunch and Learn today. So as we move about, in the end and afterwards, should you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you, and I hope that you learn a lot today.
Thanks, Gloria. Jennifer?
Jennifer Foxworthy, representing Unstoppable You Ministries and Inspirationally Speaking LLC. Just grateful to be here, and especially with this important topic.
And Candace.
Candace Parrot, Araminta, Chief Engagement Officer and Partnerships. And my hope today is that everybody will learn something they didn't already know. Thank you for having us.
Thanks. No, perfect. That is absolutely kind of where we're living today. So teen dating violence, teen dating violence awareness is in February. And it's not an accident that it coincides with Valentine's Day. And we really wanted to get to this topic, but unfortunately we had a lot of legislation that was going on this year that we were active on. And so it pushed this topic, but I didn't want to just completely bypass it until next year. I really wanted to talk about this. And I guess let's just start with teen dating violence. I did a little bit of research, because I wanted to ask you guys all the questions. What is teen dating violence, and how serious is it? Like, do we think that there's a lot of it going on? And I'm going to turn right to you guys about that. Do you have some stats on how common this is?
So for me, I think it's interesting you say teen dating violence is February, because what I say is that's when it's recognized, but it's ongoing daily, right? So for me, when I hear that, I think about the people that we work with. And when I say victims, unfortunately, a lot of them don't even recognize themselves as victims. And so when we talk about teen dating violence, they can be in a relationship that they believe isn't teen dating violence, and it is. And it's much more common than you can imagine. So again, as we go into this today, got to ask people to have an open mind, because you don't see yourself as a victim, but hopefully when you hear a lot of what we have to share today, that you'll re-evaluate where you are and who you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Candace is spot on. 1 in 3 girls will be in an teen abusive relationship in their lifetime. That's a sobering reminder that our young boys and girls are not immune. I used to share, we make excuses for the love tap. Oh, baby, that means he loves you. When someone pulls on their hair or slaps their books out of their hands or whatever the case is, we make excuses as adults of that behavior. So what we're telling that young girl is this is how love is expressed, and the boy, um, or the perpetrator that does it, that this is how you show love, through aggression. And so that love tap then becomes a love punch as they navigate through life and get older. And so we must confront that.
That's really interesting that you almost brought it down to elementary school, like the elementary school games. And so it's really interesting that, people do justify. They think that it's okay instead of really having that conversation early on. Um, and I think that just knowing the stark numbers is really tough. I think one of the things that I think about often is generational acceptance of treatment in relationships. And I wanted to put that on the table because when you're watching a movie and there's like this little perfect couple and they're so lovely and they're so nice to each other, and and people are like, that's not how people really are. And you're like, really? Like, why are people not really like that? Like, what do you think it should look like? What do you think fighting looks like? What does healthy arguments look like? And when you don't know what it looks like, it's hard to, I guess, take yourself out of the box. I feel like, people have a hard time identifying inward. It's easier to kind of look outward, right? Like, so what do you guys see as far as generational acceptance and breaking that cycle?
Again, and one thing I do want to add to this, because there's always those myths associated with those stats. Again, when I talk about an open mind, males are also victims of teen dating violence. And so I don't want to overshadow that, but we have to keep that in mind, because when we talk about that myth and they have to stand up and be strong and be bold, a lot of times people don't talk about that. But anybody that's a parent to a son, keep that open mind, because again, they go through that blame and shame. And back to what Jennifer said, where they don't think, it's okay to share it. When it comes to the males, even more so, that we have to keep that in mind. So when we talk about generational, even that, Sandra, when you mention that, it's that you're a man, toughen up, right? But when they've got a female that is violent and aggressive, that generational kicks in from a different area, a different avenue. But we have to be mindful of that, because males don't share as often as females do. We know that even in the trafficking world. And so if we have to create that safe space, we have to create it for males as well as females.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And so I should have, 1 in 3 young people. And many times they're not sharing with parents. I know for me, I'm a domestic violence survivor and thriver. So I've had my bout of poor relationships. I'm a boy mom, so I have a son, and I teach him manners and opening up doors and being respectful. And those are qualities that some young girls, women, they may see as weak or something that should be exploited. So I'm constantly sharing. I have to be the example. And that's why I'm constantly healing and self-reflecting and have that self-awareness, because I don't want to bleed on my child. At the end of the day, I'm raising someone's boyfriend, someone's husband, someone's father.
Mhm.
So I have to be mindful of what I say out of my mouth, what my husband and we have to show what healthy boundaries, communication, touch, all those things, what it looks like, because we set his normal. And I think that is something that we could even peel back even more in this lunch and learn, is how the normal is created in the home, whether it's toxic or whether it's healthy.
Absolutely.
And that sets what that teen dating violence could look like.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that you guys brought up male victims as well. I think that I also boy mom here, and it's double sided. I think for boys where you're like you don't put your hands on girls, but also you also don't let them put their hands on you because this is what we're talking about, right? Like we're talking about you're not going to receive it and you're not going to give it so that you're in a better space. You're at least putting those boundaries and using big boy words and using big girl words and articulating feelings, which is not always easy. But things aren't always easy, and relationships are not necessarily all the rainbows and bubbles and flowers. Sometimes there are arguments, but you're right. I mean, what that's supposed to look like is definitely dictated by what children see, what young people see, and how they identify with more mature relationships, and what that should look like. And I think that it's just so great. Like I remember watching the new Color Purple that came out, and I don't know why this one hit me so much more than the old Color Purple. So I don't know if you guys saw it. Also, the soundtrack's amazing, but there was this woman. She was beaten on her husband, and it was just he would just receiving it. And I'm like, wow. And I think now that I am a boy mom, I'm like, okay, listen, this is not what we're doing. This is not acceptable. But unfortunately, that's not what it always looks like in homes. And I think that's where we are now in this conversation. But you guys also discussed, like, you're not always they're not always going to parents. So let's just go into that, that mental health component. And if mom or dad is the recipient of unhealthy behaviors and what does that look like, and who do these young people go to? How can we make sure that we're safe for other young people to come to so that we can help them? And what should we do?
And so let me just jump in and add that, and working with our young people because they don't understand. And if we reminisce and go back to our first love, during those teen years, and, we were so enthralled with the honeymoon phase of it. We look at that cycle of violence, and it started with that beautiful honeymoon phase, and, young people not understanding love and what comes with love, laying that head on his shoulder and we're hugging each other and things like that. And those things that, that's the euphoria that they want to stay in, that honeymoon stage. Then something goes off and it's tension building. She saw him looking at another girl, or he saw her looking at another guy. And, that tension building is something that they don't understand. And then you have that explosive incident where they're in each other's face, yelling and screaming, hands may be flying or something like that. And I think that's where we really, really need to gauge our young people and understanding that cycle of violence, because it can start with the honeymoon and end up with an explosive, or it can start with an explosive and more tension building takes place. And so, when he or she comes to us and shares, that relationship that's going on, and, oh, she mushed me, as the kids say, she mushed my face or something like that. But it's okay. It didn't hurt. We cannot allow them to minimize any type of anything that looks like violence, aggression. We cannot allow them to minimize that. And oftentimes with our young people, oh, it wasn't that bad. You understand? But we have to show them, this cycle of violence and that mush in the face can end up being you being thrown down the steps. That's where we have to educate our young people on that cycle of violence and to look for that.
Gloria, I agree 100%. And I call that the test phase, right? That's where they're testing how far they can take it. So it can be a mushed face, And the next thing you know, it's a punch to the face. And the next thing, then it's even worse than that, right? So I agree with that 100%. And it is getting our kids to understand in that whole mental health industry, as Sandra said, it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to share where you're at that time and space. So I agree, Gloria, exactly what you said. That honeymoon phase is very real. And later when we talk about trafficking, I'm going to circle back to that because that is a key factor in the trafficking world.
Absolutely. You know, it's the pattern of that control and abuse and the gaslighting or the minimizing. And so absolutely we need to educate our young boys and girls what healthy looks like and to communicate with someone they consider safe to share. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we know that people who are abused, domestic violence or trafficking, the depression and the anxiety, the thoughts of suicide, all of that compound. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation, and I'm hoping that the audience really takes it to heart.
And I want to circle back to something that Sandra said. What does it look like when they come out of an unhealthy family situation, right? So what may be abnormal to us is normal to them. So if they're used to seeing a parent that, and again, I'm not going to say it's male to female, female to male, it goes both ways. So when they see that, that's their everyday thing, where they see that abuse go on in the home, that's their norm. And so when somebody's telling them it's not okay, so Sandra, when you touched on that, that is huge.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, that generational acceptance is such a huge thing. It's getting out of our own way. It really is, just as a people, to just know that we can be better than the generation before us. It means nothing to not completely follow in someone's footsteps. Like, you know, you always want to be better. But, you know, when you're used to someone being beaten at home and then you're just being verbally abused, then you're like, oh, it's just not so bad. And then that's when we're justifying other people's actions, even though it's not nice. Like, you know, it's not a nice feeling. You don't like it. But instead of just saying, hey, listen, you're not talking to me like that. This is what we're not going to do. And setting the boundaries, like you guys said, you know, they're accepting. And then that's when we get into that human trafficking, because we're talking about financial situations, where you live. And that's a lot more of a grown thing. But I think that accepting and then moving in together because, oh, it's not so bad. And then now you're in a different position completely because you are now financially entwined with another human where it already wasn't so great, instead of kind of working out those kinks. So, I mean, you know, I think that my daughter married her high school boyfriend, and they're lovely. They're like, love them so much. But I mean, you know, my point in even mentioning that is that people marry their high school sweethearts all the time. You know, just because I didn't doesn't mean that, you know, other people don't. And so, you know, you want to make sure that our young people are in those healthy relationships, because you don't know where it's going to end. It's not just puppy love. You don't know where that relationship is going to end as grownups. So let's just give them a little bit of that acknowledgement that they're teenagers. They're not babies, and they're going to make these decisions. And we just want to make sure that they're guided in the right direction. And yes, they're lovely. So no worries there. Just bringing up high school teenage dating can lead to marriage.
Yeah. Okay.
After how long? So let's talk about being that safe person, what you can do to help our young people before it gets to the next step, which we can talk about human trafficking and domestic violence and all the next steps of that. Being a safe person, what are some resources that you guys really favor as far as maybe a grown-up kind of directing a young person? Or and you know what? I did pull up this stat because while we were in the office last week, one of my coworkers found this healthy teen dating, very timely that she found this for me. And it was a report that was done for Maryland in 2018 by the governor's office. And some stats on here that I wanted to share is Overall, 1 in 3 females and 1 in 7 males is the number. In Maryland, 10.1% of high school students reported experiencing physical dating violence, and 10.3 reported experience sexual dating violence. That is huge numbers. 10% is astronomical. And then, of course, we break down the highest risk is Black and Latinx youth. It looks like one study found that the prevalence of teen dating violence amongst Black or Latino community, 41%, which is awful. And about 30% of the youth in the study reported both victimization and perpetration in current or past relationships.
So even to that, though, I caution people because I'm not a lover of stats. We need them, right?
Yep.
Nonprofits need them, that. But the reality of it is it's probably double to triple what is reported, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's trafficking,
Yes.
whether it's domestic abuse, whether it's teen dating, we only know what is reported. And I always say to people, when they talk about we polled blah, 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 and I said, well, how many of you were polled? Nobody. So none of our votes were included, right? So
Sure.
you have to be realistic about stats too. That's a great base, but I encourage people to remember that it's probably triple what is reported, which is horrific. So if we think 10% is horrific, imagine if it's triple that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. I mean, stats are just what they are. It's just something to kind of go by.
Yes.
To try to identify issues. But I mean, really, we're worried about everybody. And
Yes.
I mean, when we're talking about stats as well, we're not even including, I mean, there's also a breakdown in here for LGBTQ. And those young people, which is a whole nother category.
Yes.
And we actually did a domestic violence session on one of our lunch and learns that was specifically for the LGBTQ community as we lead up to June, which is Pride Month. And what it looks like for them is completely different based on who's the more masculine, who's the more feminine of the genders. And if you have a male who's more feminine, how maybe the authorities would maybe favor that person because they tend to identify the more feminine person as the victim, whereas it could be the exact opposite. So coming into those types of relationships as well, kind of has you spun around in trying to share information and make sure that you're talking to the right people. Well, the right people is everyone. The right people is everyone. I have these lunch and learns and I'm like, share this because you don't know. I mean, you don't know who you're helping. And so, we definitely want to keep open minds with what it looks like. And who we're trying to target. And my answer is always, we're going to try to just educate everyone. Just try to educate everyone because everyone can help to educate the next person.
These are just all great points. I think it's also helpful when we're communicating with our young boys and girls, using their language or understanding their language, not talking over their head or under them, to where they understand. It's no longer with a toddler, good touch, bad touch. Giving them examples. If someone, you got skinny legs, why don't you eat more? Or you eat too much. I don't even want to take you out on a date because, so if it's that constant demeaning, putting down, humiliating, embarrassing, and then, trying to gloss over it when, hey, that hurt my feelings. Or what did you mean by that? Oh, you're just too sensitive. Those are red flags. So I think I would love to make sure that it's in schools even more or at the home. I know we're all hosting events, but trying to encourage parents that there's resources out there, even brochures. Like I have this one, understanding and preventing dating violence. And this is in regards to, teens. I have brochures like this and others. So I think just using their language, breaking it down and giving them examples will be
Absolutely.
helpful.
Absolutely. And I must say, I mean, because I still own some teenagers. They still belong to me, for now. But I must say, even, when my daughter was coming out of high school, our young people are so smart. I mean, they're so they have access to so much information that they're a lot smarter than we think. Like, we think that they're just, with their, whatever outfits on and the music that they listen to, because we're getting old and we think all their stuff is crap and our stuff is good, because that's just kind of how our parents did it too. So we think our music's superior. But I think that they have access to so much information, so it's a matter of, like, putting it out there like this lunch and learn, hoping that they grab it if they can. I think that Patrice, thank you so much for the question. Her question was, how do we get this information and resources in front of students in school systems? I shared with Candace when we started that I actually taught during COVID, like before COVID and then during COVID. And, getting into the school systems is a tough thing. It's a tough thing. But what I can tell you is your PTOs and your PTAs and your PTSAs and all those parent organizations are an amazing start to try to get into your school systems. Schools are tough to get into because, parents as a whole, they want to somewhat guard what their children are learning. But I think that PTOs, all those parent teacher organizations are great. They usually highlight things every month. So it's a good start. And if any school wanted for Maryland crime victims to come out, or us to, I'm sure that we would gather and put it together for an organization. Maryland Crime Victims is also working on town halls that are in different areas. We're happy to create more opportunities to learn and have these conversations in person, where kids can actually ask the questions. Young people can ask the questions, because right now we're at 12 o'clock, which is lunch for grown-ups, but the kids are still at school. So if that's something that schools or young people or groups are interested in, I know that MCVRC would be there at the drop of a hat, and I'm sure that you ladies would be as well.
And Sandra, we are in the schools. We actually have a Teens Against Trafficking that's across Maryland, because I'm public awareness for the Maryland Human Trafficking Task Force. And so a lot of people say it's difficult to get in the schools, and it is. But again, I'm an old hat, so I think I've been in this industry for many years. But even when we're welcomed in, I actually rotate 7 periods a day. So if I'm invited into we're in the high schools and the middle schools. And when people say, wow, you got into the schools, we're not in near as many schools as we need to be. So usually, like, I train the SROs, Board of Education, educators. So if people want at the end of this, either to connect with you guys or connect with me, I'm happy to come out there and do that. But we have a presentation with Anne Arundel. We had to get it approved. Montgomery County is very open to it, the Eastern Shore. Yeah. So some counties are easier to get into, but very often it's a parent, or like you said, the PTAs, PTOs that jump in there for us. And because we are very resourceful, and with those presentations, it's a preventative, right? And what I say is, we do the preventative, the education, and the restorative. I would much rather get your child. I'm a boy mom of 3 too. So for me, I want to get those on the beginning of it, not on the tail end of it. Do I have to handle cases one-on-one with, again, we'll get into that. But absolutely, when it comes to the schools, we're in there. I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. But our Teens Against Trafficking, even if we have parents that want to learn more about that, I'm happy to share that, put information at the end.
Thank you so much.
I know with Unstoppable You Ministries, we host a lot of events, and collaboration is key. That's why Candace Parrot is a great resource for us. So in February, we hosted a Love Smart teen dating violence event. It was basically about healthy relationships. So we didn't even use the word teen dating violence, because many schools, they hear that and they just no. So we left it Love Smart, building healthy relationships, invited resources in regards to Shared Hope, Center for Children, local resources, Southern Maryland Center for Family Advocacy, even partnerships on base, at our local military base, because they deal with sexual assault prevention. So we like bringing everybody together in one room for the community. It was our first time, but what was awesome is that we had a group home where the staff brought like 18 young boys and girls. So we know, how do we keep those who are part of the juvenile justice system, for how do we reduce that recidivism rate? Because they need to know, and more than likely in their homes, or that they're escaping, or whatever their surroundings, that healthy is not being displayed. So there are a lot of events, like Candace had mentioned, where we're trying to make a difference. It's just a matter of helping the community understand that there are resources and why they need to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. And I think that even in having this conversation, the number of resources that like we could have had, I like to keep this group small because it gives everybody kind of an opportunity to kind of have that conversation versus, when you have 15 people, you might not get to say your 2 cents or what have you. But there's a lot of organizations down here as well where I am, where they are working. So I think that if you're determined to get your kids educated, your students, your whatever, reach out. I'm sure any one of them would jump at the opportunity to just kind of raise awareness, and kind of keep our kids in a healthy space. So let's get into human trafficking. I know, Candace, you are dying to jump in. So let's talk about teen dating violence, how it relates to human trafficking. We can kind of delve into, I mean, I'm pretty sure that we all kind of know the clear cut how it turns into domestic violence, right? So, I mean, I don't think that we need to go down there, but let's talk about that human trafficking.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So
go at it.
this is something, again, that's dear to my heart. I'm passionate about it, educating our youth. And so with the youth, again, like I said earlier, they do not see themselves as victims. They absolutely do not. And so when we're getting them to understand what that looks like, the very same things that we tell people to prevent in the trafficking world are the same things that we're telling them to prevent in the teenage world, if that makes sense. So it looks like somebody dating them, they think they're a partner, and before they know it, they're embroiled with a trafficker. And so when I'm in the schools and I'm educating everybody from whatever your industry is, I'm going to tell you how you can avoid trafficking, right? I educate doctors and lawyers and realtors and just every single thing that there is, because you can prevent it, whether they're your children or somebody else's children. And so when you look at it, what does that look like? It can look like a child skipping school, and before you know it, they're part of a trafficking ring, and you cannot convince them that that trafficker is not their partner. And that's where the whole grooming and the recruiting happens. And so when they think that that person is paying for their hair, paying for their nails, and with the boys, buying them the shoes, paying for their time that they think, they're getting their individual time, boys and girls. And so very often that stereotypical is it's a male trafficker and a female victim. Absolutely not. I have seen victims as young as 4 years old. And so we work hands-on. We don't just talk it, we work it, right? At Araminta, we're very involved. And so when people say to me, well, what does that look like? That isolation, those red flags, by the time that trafficker has got that mind control, you're not undoing that easily. And so I think that's where people have to be realistic when they talk about how that teen dating violence happens. It looks like, okay, I paid for you to get your hair done. If I punch you in the face, I have the right to punch you in the face because I'm the one taking care of you. One thing that Jennifer touched on was the group homes, right? We do a lot in the group homes. And those kids, you cannot convince them that anybody cares about them more than the trafficker, right? What are their options? Group home versus trafficker spoiling them. But what we, work hard on is to teach them the reality of that trafficker is not who they say they are. We have female traffickers as well as male traffickers. So with that teen dating, it leads into it. It starts off nice. It's the whole grooming. It's the whole recruiting. It's the whole, this looks wonderful until it doesn't. And then by the time they're caught up in it, they're so caught up, they don't know how to get out of it, in simple terms.
Yeah. And I just want to bring in the social media piece that ends up like a gateway to corresponding, these social media apps. There's so many, and many times they're talking to someone, they think they're the same age and they're not, they're much older. So if a child has a parent missing in their life, whether they passed away, whether that parent walked out or they're in jail, whatever the case is, they feel like they have to look for love and acceptance. And they may latch on to someone who has no good intentions for them whatsoever. And especially if it's a big age difference. Now it's, he's paying me attention. He loves me. He's buying me this. He's buying me that, or she. But it's the grooming. So the social media, the sextortion, the blackmail, all of that. And I know Candace is a huge subject matter expert. I'm an advocate. We see our own clients, but try to be more on the awareness side. So yeah, there's so much in the intersection of it.
Yeah. Gloria sees a lot of it too, I'm sure. So yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely a lot. I mean, it's all different kinds of worries than we kind of grew up with. Don't take candy from strangers, and it's like times 1 million at this point. And so it's crazy. And I am always so happy that I've been so blessed to be able to be at home with my kids, to be getting them off the bus. Like, I've always had someone get my kids off the bus. They've never gone to daycare. They've never gone to whatever. But not everyone is as lucky. People work several jobs. Kids are home by themselves, or mom's going to her second job or hasn't come home yet, or people's experiences are so different in the world. And we have to allow grace for people to live those lives. And not everything is got a bow on it. Parents are out there working 2, 3, 4, 5 jobs, part-time jobs, because full-time jobs are rough and people are getting laid off. And the world is a crazy one. And the blessing is for the parents that are active in their children's lives. And sometimes the kids don't even have that. So, we as a society and as a community are trying to catch all the things that we can, so that these young people aren't alone and aren't lost. And it's a heavy bag. It can be a heavy bag. But we're not alone. We've got all of each other, right? So we're just buttoning in all the pieces, putting all the pieces to the puzzle together to try to make something make sense. But yeah, so there's all that going on. I'm going to turn to Gloria for a second. All these things are going on. And I'm going to pull Maryland crime victims into this, because once things have happened, once things have become physical, once there are forced sexual contacts, what can teens do without their parents? And the answer sucks, right, Gloria?
Well, oftentimes, teens are left kind of to their own volition at times. You understand? Because, as Candace mentioned, this is one of the most underreported crimes, teen dating violence as well as domestic violence. And so oftentimes, the school may have something set up based under Title IX. There may be some things, a lot of times in your colleges, but in your high schools as well. There are counselors and things that teens can go to. But if a teen is physically harmed, the parent can seek some reimbursement for some of those related expenses via the Criminal Injury Compensation Board. A teen, because they're underage, it's not a lot that they can do on their own. But with that parent seeking, if they had missed time from work to take care of the victim, injuries to the victim, the parent can submit an application to the Criminal Injuries Compensation Board for reimbursement of some of those expenses related to the victimization.
So police reports can happen and they can receive services in court, but it has to be with their parents' authorization and approval because they're underage. So all the more reason for, like I said, the community to get involved, know what resources are available to help guide you. You've got a police report, and then you've got some actions that Maryland crime victims can help you with, in addition to helping with CICB, which is compensation, the financial part. But those are big leaps and bound steps for young people. It's real. I feel like, it's really hard to move from dating and actually reporting any type of violence. And the schools have things in place, but I think that from what I've seen in the teens that I've been around, like, they find that one grown-up or two grown-ups or someone's friend's mom that they feel that they can talk to. I just feed everybody. Like, that's my answer, is always like feeding them. And then all of a sudden, they're spilling it. So, to have that, someone else's mom, your neighbor, young people, if you're watching out there, more people care about you than you think. And you just got to turn to that one person that always says good morning, or that one person that always asks you how you're doing. And I bet you that person will take you under their wing and try to help you out. And that I live by that. I feel like there's more good people out there than we know. We try to mind our business for the most part, but I tell you what, when it's time to get involved, I think most people will stand up and try to do the right thing for these young people. And I hope that this information has been helpful to young people out there. What did we not cover?
Well, I would like to add, Sandra, also, and working and doing this work, Candace and Jennifer and you and myself, one of the biggest things is education, knowing the audience that we serve, and oftentimes we forget about culture. We forget about religious sects and things that they believe in that, may be acceptable in this culture, but not in a U.S. culture. And sometimes those clashes take place where, something that happens with a young girl that's normal, say, in another culture, is not normal here. That's, can bring charges or something like that. So in doing this work, we have to educate ourselves when we're working with different clients and understanding their background, whether they were born here in this country, whether they just arrived in this country. And so oftentimes, going to the schools, because most are underage and they're attending schools. And so this education is vital so that they can understand, no, that's not normal, because this is practiced in your native country. So that's one of the things that we have to keep at the forefront, knowing our audience, who we are working with.
Gloria, I'm so happy to hear you say that. I just developed a cultural competency training for that reason, because in certain cultures, not only do the people not understand it, do the teachers and the educators not understand it, law enforcement doesn't understand it. So when I talk about familial trafficking in certain cultures, that it is acceptable, right? People say, where is it ever acceptable? Oh, it is. And so, I know Jennifer touched on when you come from a single parent. Well, I've dealt with a victim who came from a middle class two-parent. And that is another thing that we see. And, again, Jennifer's absolutely right. We see a lot of the single parents. We see a lot of the two parents. So I actually work with a mother whose child was trafficked for 2 years. And her thing was, Candace, how did it happen to me? It can happen to anybody. And I think, that is the understanding, Gloria, but I'm so happy to hear you bring up that cultural, because cultural competency is so important. And that's why I decided to develop it, because if people think it only happens to Black and brown people and it only happens in, no, absolutely not. And we've got to have that expansive mind and that expansive understanding of why it's important to understand what goes on in different cultures, and what works for one doesn't work for another. I mean, there are certain people that if they're trafficked or even the whole domestic violence and the rape and the sexual assault, right? That's death in their cultures. So again, people say, what? Just because you live in the US doesn't mean the other cultures don't exist in the US. So I'm so happy to hear you bring that up, Gloria. Thank you.
And also to Candace, and speaking of trafficking, oftentimes we look at the sex trafficking, but not the labor trafficking. And sometimes that is just as paramount. Oftentimes when I'm moving around and I see a lot of people selling flowers on the corner, and I often think, are they being labor trafficked? Are they okay? And so oftentimes, we overlook those that are labor trafficked versus those that are sex trafficked.
Yep. And one step further, and the kids, when I bring this into the high schools, they're like, what? And I talk about illegal orders, right? So when we talk about organ trafficking, all of this is trafficking. It's not just sex trafficking. And that's why I break it down into categories for them. And the kids get so enthralled, like, what? Yeah. You know how much you can get for a kidney? And so that's the reality of it. Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. I wanted to bring to the forefront anything that makes a child vulnerable, whether they developed an addiction to prescription drugs, alcohol. We know those can be gateways to be manipulated and controlled. That low self-esteem, not even, gang members recruiting and I had a thought, but the vulnerabilities, disabilities, being on the spectrum, we want to have a sense of belonging. But if we don't pour into our young boys and girls of what does that healthy sense of belonging looks like, they will find themselves navigating towards darkness or uncharted waters that they'll end up drowning in. Spirituality, the churches, in my opinion, are not talking about these issues enough. They keep in the four walls, and we have to come out of the four walls to talk about the pornography, the sex entertainment. So when a child is exposed to those magazines or those videos, now they might want to mimic, or again, just talking about the vulnerabilities and the intersections to all of these things that domestic teen dating violence and human trafficking are segues to.
Thank you guys so much for including those items. I definitely culturally, I mean, it's always a hard jump, and there's so many different cultures out there, and there's so many things that are acceptable in so many other places. And I used to actually work for the U.S. Agency for International Development in a past life, many, many moons ago. And I remember reading this report, and the report was based out of a mission in Peru. And it was super thick. And for some reason, I actually took it upon myself as a college kid. Like, I had all this time in the world because I'm just one of those people that just, has to fill up every second of my day. And I read this thing, and it was a report on how women didn't know that they had a right to not be beaten by their husbands. And as a college kid who was, I don't know what world I was living in. I mean, I'm from right here, so I'm not sure what I was thinking. And I was like, oh my gosh, they don't know that. And it just was, I mean, and so it just speaks to the fact that, like, you're raised up in this way, and it's just the way that things are, and that things are the way that they are. Like, that's all it is. And if women don't get beaten by their husband, well, that's them, and that's not us. Like, that's not how, like, they are, like, there's already a line that is drawn. And so it's really it's a tough thing to make that differentiation here, and just be like, we could also do it like this. How about we not do that? So anyway, so thanks for bringing all those items up, and all of these important topics. Okay, I'm gonna go through our little list that we had pre-identified, some things that we wanted to talk about. So I'm gonna run down this little list about just general acceptance. Oh, do we want to talk about really quickly this control wheel? I know you guys have said, I know Gloria loves this. Mine's not color. Okay, when we found the little report, they also found this, and this one is a teen power and control wheel. Evidently, there's one that's for domestic violence as well. These are, for those of you at home, these are really good indicators of some of the social cues and things that you might notice in relationships that might be a bunch of red flags. So for this one, it has the peer pressure that we talked about, the isolation and exclusion, limiting where your boyfriend, girlfriend go, who they're with, why you going there, all of those types of things. The sexual coercion that we talked about, the threats we talked about, minimizing, denying with the blame, the intimidation, the social statuses. You guys hit all these, man. It's like you guys had that wheel right in front of you. And then the anger and emotional abuse. Those are all indicators that are on this wheel. You guys hit them like pros. Talk about subject matter experts. So I wanted to share that. And then also in this report, some warning signs to recognize teen dating violence. Checking his or her cell phone or email without permission. So is someone checking your phone when you put your phone down and checking what you're up to? Constantly putting him or her down, which Jennifer spoke of. Extreme jealousy and insecurity. Explosive tempers. Isolating him or her with family or friends. I think the family part is really interesting. And you see a lot of that in domestic violence as well. Making false accusations, mood swings, physically hurting him or her in any way, possessiveness. It's not cute. It's not cute. It's not, oh, he loves me so much that he or she loves me so much that she, no. Telling him or her what to do and then pressuring or forcing him or her to have sex. So those are some of those warning signs. Those are those red flags for those of you at home. Okay, I think that's it. I guess we'll round robin out of here. If you guys have any last words, dropping any contact info and any additional resources or upcoming events that you have. I'll start with Gloria.
I just want to encourage, and thank everyone who tuned in today and encourage our young people. If you see something, as they say something to the person. If you see a young woman, angry in the street crying, say something. If you see something, say something, because they don't know. They don't know. And it's up to each and every one of us to treat other people's children as if they're your own.
Oh my God.
So I encourage anybody to reach out to Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. We are here for you. I am passionate and serious about the work that I do. So you will never, ever feel alone if you call Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. And thank you once again for tuning in.
Thanks, Gloria. Jennifer?
Anytime I get a chance to be around change champions as yourselves, it's a good day. I'm always learning something, or just the collaboration and just getting the information out. And that's what, I do. I share my testimony as a survivor and thriver, but also an advocate dealing with domestic violence and human trafficking. Unstoppable You Ministries, we fill in the gaps. So where a lot of agencies may have some red tape as far as their funding, resources, Unstoppable You Ministries can be that resource. We do provide training as well. We partnered with a church in Mechanicsville, Maryland, July 26th, and Sandra, I can share these flyers with you. We will be hosting a human trafficking awareness workshop centered around the documentary Blind Eyes Open: The Truth About Sex Trafficking in America. And then we'll have a panel discussion. In October, we will host our third annual Strive for Change Domestic Violence Awareness 5K Walk Run. And then in September 27th, we are hosting the Southern Maryland Suicide Prevention Summit, Choosing Life, Finding Hope. So again, we host many events, even retreats. We just want to provide wraparound services and fill in the gaps and just lock arms with other agencies, stakeholders, and get in the trenches. This is dirty work. I'm like, work me out of a nonprofit. This is, it's heartbreaking. But the light at the end of the tunnel is if someone receives resources, that prevention, that awareness, and they understand the red flags, then it's like, okay, making a difference. So thank you for having me as a guest.
Thanks, Jennifer. All right, Candace.
Sandra, thank you so much for having us as guests, because my slogan is collaboration, not competition. And this is exactly why we do what we do. To the audience, I say if there are parents listening, there's a reason you're listening, because you're concerned. And as you said earlier, Sandra, if you are that youth that you like and can engage with somebody else's parent, do that. But for the youth, I say create your safe space, whatever that looks like. You may not be able to tell a parent because we don't know your situation. But what I can assure you is we care enough to get involved. As Gloria said, we are here as a resource for you. The training that we do, we don't charge for any of our trainings. We come out and we do that. If the youth are involved in learning more about Teens Against Trafficking, they can go on the aramintausa.org website and reach out to me. Invite us into your schools, invite us into your community, and invite us in to wherever you are. I don't care if you're part of a church, part of a community, part of your job. Let us come in and educate you, because the more we educate, the more we reach. And I cannot say that enough. Again, for you youth that are listening, there's a reason that you're listening. I don't care if you see this 3 months from now, reach out to us, because there's something that you know is not right. And if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. And so you see this panel here, we care enough to come together. So let us care enough to get you the assistance that you need. Don't second guess yourself, and don't say, I don't want to bother anybody. You are not a bother. You're a bother when we haven't been able to reach you, because we don't sit comfortable if we're not able to help you. Use the resources that are there. Parents, if you know something isn't right with your child and you cannot reach your child, reach us so that we can reach your child. We thank you for listening, and we cannot do it without you. We are a community and we need to get closer together. Thank you, Sandra.
Thanks so much, Candace. Wow, that was a lot of head nodding that I think my neck hurts from agreeing with you guys so much today. I hope that those at home that have been listening or that have tuned in, whether it be live or later on, have learned something and gotten something out of this. We try to share these topics so that we're raising awareness in our community for people that might need it. It might be 2:00 in the morning and you're scrolling and trying to figure out what your next steps are, what your plans are. We've got these ladies that are absolutely willing to go the extra yard for these young people in our community. Maryland Crime Victims has been here for a very long time. We don't specifically handle any specific crime. We deal with any crime throughout the state of Maryland for free. Our resources and our services do not cost you anything. Our advocates are happy to help guide you through the process, find resources that are appropriate for you in your case, whether it be domestic violence, assault, homicide, any of the crimes. And we've got attorneys that will accompany you to court and handle your voice to make sure that you are being heard. And we've got all these other great organizations that we have to tap into, because we only do the legal side. Listen, you can only do so much. And so anyone out there who needs that. So stay tuned next time. Please make sure that you share this. You never know who you're going to help out there. You never know what people are going through, what their thoughts are. There's so many of us that, well, I don't. I talk a lot. So there's so many of us that you don't know what they're going through. So you just never really know who you're helping. So please make sure that you share this on your social media in hopes to just raising awareness. Gloria, what'd you think of?
Yes, one quick thing. At the end of, when I go out and I do presentations, and as we said when we started, that the audience that we probably needed are in school right now. So, the few minutes that we have, I'd like to take a moment, for those victims present and those that were created since we've been doing this lunch and learn. Just a moment of silence for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Gloria. If you guys need something at home, please, please, please reach out. And good point. Share this video later on when the kids are out of school. Maybe it'll pop up in their timeline, and maybe they'll listen to a couple minutes, and a couple minutes is better than 0. So thanks so much. And we'll see you guys next month.